It's a gorgeous day in Portugal and a wonderful venue for another Friday night where we will be spending it on Le Mans Ultimate for the ARL Friday Multi-Class Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Tonight for round 4, we are at Autodromo Internazionale Algarve, better known as Portimao, the full-length, full beans circuit that has hosted, well, great racing all throughout its lifetime. I'm sure tonight will be no exception. 35 minutes of qualifying split between all three classes tonight, followed by a 1-hour-long sprint race. My name is Jack Mays. I will be bringing you the sights and the sounds and talking your ears off throughout the night. And as always, looking forward to it. Le Mans Ultimate is a favorite of mine of The Sims, leave alone for its wonderful broadcasting tools. But enough preamble. Let's get straight into qualifying. We have our LM GT3s taking to the circuit first to start us off. And everybody beginning to begin to feed around the circuit to set their quickest lap time. They got 10 minutes to do so. They're already about 90 seconds in, so we should begin to see the benchmark times coming through. No fancy shenanigans this evening. No increased tire wear. No increased fuel consumption. It is rather a pretty straightforward start to finish 60-minute sprint race that we have tonight. Portimao is, as I already said, a fantastic circuit. It asks a lot from you as a driver. A good mix of low speed, high speed, and medium speed corners. It asks a lot from your cars as well. A good setup here can save your life. A bad setup, it can make your race just a little bit harder. Tetsuo Hideyoshi is going to start us off by setting a benchmark time at 1:48.355 to get us going into qualifying. I have a feeling, a sneaking suspicion, maybe we'll call it, that is not the quickest we're going to see tonight. After all, everybody's in the business of warming their tires and going a bit quicker. Todd Tillery proving me right, already improving on Tetsuo's time. And I'm thinking we're going to have a good mixture of LM GT3 cars, though. It seemed like we were a little bit light in this category as of practice. But still, sure to give us some enjoyable racing. And qualifying, be it no difference. Gabriel Prado has jumped up to the top of the times in the first few minutes. Lots of Mustangs gracing us tonight, seeming to be the favorite of the bunch. Not that it's a general favorite. It's not like iRacing where it seems to be the best choice. In fact, as far as I'm aware, it's about a relatively mid-pack car. Kevin Serra still hooning it round, getting a little bit out of shape in their Lexus. Devin Mastillo going up, putting a rather huge gap between themselves and the rest at the moment. 5 cars having fed on track. Maybe we'll see a bit more. I think that was Todd Tillery parked on the grass just on the outside, maybe getting the best view of the circuit to come. And to give you an even better view, we're going to go on board with Kevin Serra for a lap around Portimao. And for those of you who aren't familiar, hopefully this will give you a good idea of the challenge that this circuit poses. Turn 1 being no exception, a heavy braking zone into a super fast sweeping corner. Turn 2, the kink. Turn 3, a hairpin, which immediately starts to fire uphill for turn 4. which begins the second longest straight on the circuit, and one of the best overtaking opportunities we'll see in the race, which is turn 5. Downhill braking zone. A lot of camber on the apex. Generally, you don't want to be missing that. Another kink for turn 6. Turn 7 here. Depending on your class of car, maybe it's a brake, maybe it's a lift. But down the gears rapidly for turn 8. Back uphill. You get your traction wrong. Maybe ask too much of the car. It will spit you out. Turn 8. Kink number 3 for turn 9. And uphill for turn 11, Portimao corner. Possibly the most difficult corner on the circuit. You're pretty much blind coming up. You're blind coming over the apex, but dealt with reasonably well from Kevin Serra. Through 11, 12, and now into 13 for the penultimate hairpin of the lap. 14 now. Another downhill braking zone. A super long right-hander that can really catch you out, especially if you run a bit deep like that. And full beans to turn 15. A blind, committed crest. That is the final corner. Get it right, you're a hero. Get it wrong, well, you're probably going to get a track limits violation, but a reasonably good-looking lap from Kevin Serra. And that puts them up to P2. Seems like we've got Tetsuo Hideyoshi beginning another outlap. We saw them earlier on. Whether they had short-filled their car or whether they maybe made a bit of a mistake. I did notice they came out on full fuel at the beginning of the session, so maybe put in a little bit of a sighting lap, realized, I'm carrying around a lot more weight than perhaps I need to. Go in, change that, roll out, and get back going again. It seems like we do have 2 more cars that have joined the session. Todd Tillery into pit lane immediately. Put in a good lap to begin with, but seeming that not able to get quite up to grips beyond that. But should be some of the last laps being started for the LMGT3s as Tetsuo Hideyoshi. Maybe an early invalidation, maybe deciding, actually I'm good. Is David Mastillo, after invalidating their lap, comes down pit lane. Bit of pit practice. Never too much to be done when coming into pit lane. It's not a super tricky entry into Portimao. It's one of the more straightforward ones, though. You do need to learn your braking point because you are coming in hot. See Kevin Serra up in Sector 1. A lot of struggles in Sector 2. It would need to be a really, really solid third sector to find any improvement here, but they're going to come over the line in just a moment. Down as well in Sector 3, so maybe pushing the upper limits of what they're capable of. Really taking a lot of curb on the apex. Jumping back towards Josh Beckham, getting ready to set their first time. And fortunately for them, you come out late. You don't have as much time to put into or enough time on circuit to bring your tires up to temperature. So maybe not a blistering time, but still could be a time nonetheless for Josh Peckham. They'd have enough time to start another lap. Actually, no, they definitely don't have enough time to start another lap. The LMP2s will begin to start coming on to the circuit, or begin to start feeding out into pit lane. As through 12 and 13 goes Josh Peckham. Honestly, at this point, they should just be looking to maybe set a bit of a benchmark, settle into what's going to maybe feel a bit more like some race pace. But Tetsuo Hideyoshi off the mark, so a possibility to jump at least up to 5th. There's now only a couple of cars on circuit. Peckham's going to come across the line and go into pit lane. So not looking to set a lap time. Hideyoshi, though, coming through to start their final lap, though I do know don't believe they're supposed to be on the circuit. In fact, pretty sure that this has to be an in-lap, if anything. Time ran out for their qualifying session, so let's call it an in-lap as the mighty LMP3s have hit the stage. A bit of a unique mix-up of cars. Usually when you're starting to see LMP3s, you think ELMS, so of course LMGT3s, LMP3s, and the unrestricted ELMS spec LMP2 cars. But no, Hypercar, the top spec this time around. As a certified Hypercar enthusiast, I am very glad for that. A lot more LMP3s have joined the grid since Barcelona, which is good to see. Though the two Magruders are still out and in force. Interestingly, I do have to shout it out because it is the first time I've ever seen one of these on the track. It's Jeff H bringing in the Decane, the newest and final edition of the LMP3 class that, unlike the Ginetta, which sort of was released to immediate praise, everybody who'd been driving the Ligier for months said, no, we're getting in the Ginetta. The Decane, not so much. Doesn't seem like it's really up to snuff, as on the brakes on the outlap into turn 8, Jeff H is spat out, but we'll be able to continue on. Let's call it a aggressive tire warming strategy, as Cameron Magruder is getting ready to start their first flying lap. And just to make my life extra difficult, here is Randy, his father, in the exact same car. So thank you, gentlemen, for that. I appreciate you making your life, making my life just a little bit more confusing. Just wait till we get to the hypercars. There's 3 Jota Porsches, so that is going to be fun. Paul Wagner, as they are the first to set some times. It is purple in Sector 1. Will it stand? It's standing to the test of one Magruder. But the benchmark will be set early on, though story of everybody's life who's done qualifying. First few laps, not necessarily representative. Call it a benchmark, call it a prep lap, whatever you want, it's still timed, and it's definitely not gonna be the quickest they're gonna go, at least hopefully. Mr. Vallejo, welcome back into the chat. And I love the LMP3s. I think not enough people like them, and not enough people want to try them because they're difficult to drive, as all prototypes are. They kind of get bullied around in multi-class because they're just that bit faster than GT3s, and top spec cars think they can fly past them and think that they have so much more minimum speed than they do. But this is a prototype, and it is almost equally fast in terms of minimum speed in some corners as an LMP2. So they kind of get knocked around, I think, unfairly. I think more people need to drive LMP3s. I don't do it enough, mainly because I endurance race, and when I endurance race, there's probably a hypercar, and if there's a hypercar, I'm getting in the hypercar. But Cameron Magruder to set the benchmark at a 140.587 so far. They're all going to come through. Cameron, of course, seeming to be sort of coming into his own in these P3s. Granted, he had it pretty much all to his own in the first round. His father, Randy, not up to speed at Barcelona, really only joining so that there was one other car on the grid. But still showing that they have the pace for the moment. Already improving in Sector 1 and Sector 2, as there's Paul Wagner, parked just out of the way enough at turn 10. But we're hoping for a reasonably good race here. I think Portimao is one of those circuits that is tricky enough. Overtaking is not super easy, but there are a lot of opportunities that leads to really good close racing. And then when you introduce the multi-class element, it just gets better. It's just improved massively by traffic and having to work your way around other cars, being worked around by other cars. It may, you know, may give you an advantage, may take away a bit of time giving advantage to other cars, is the old adage, multi-class giveth and taketh. I'm looking forward to the race, though we have another 16 minutes of qualifying time to go. Only 5 more minutes for our LMP3s. But that is enough time for them to do a handful more laps. 3 for the most of them, depending on where they are on the circuit. As Jeff H., who I have to admit is making the jump from AMS2 into LMU. This is the first time I've seen him on circuit. Super excited. Not so, because he's in a Duquesne as well, but jumping up to second ahead of the rest of the Ginetta field, which does make up 90% of every LMP3 car driven, just because it is kind of the best one all around, compared to the Ligier and the Duquesne. The Ligier, good in a straight line, not as great in the corners. The Duquesne, frankly, I don't know what it's good at, if it's good at anything, because nobody drives them. But another mistake in turn 8. It is, I think turn 11's maybe the trickiest corner, but I feel like turn 8 is the one where most mistakes are made, just because you're so on edge, you're asking so much from your car. It's almost to the top goes Paul Wagner, if not for a slow third sector. Still a second off, so not really almost, but almost enough. That is a good point that Leon Viejo in chat makes, that the Ginetta has its steering wheel on the correct side, which is absolutely correct, because the other two are French, and the French are weird. So they put it on the wrong side, even though they drive on the you know, the right side of the, it's a thing. I don't know. But well, they drive on the left side, which is the wrong side. Well, they drive on the right side, which is the wrong side, which the left is the right side. I've confused myself more than anybody else. Paul Wagner going quicker again. Another purple sector 1, but not snatching a personal, well, snatching a personal best, but not a session best in sector 2. They're going to come around, perhaps looking to mount a bit of a challenge. A clean sector 3 could get a lot closer, though Cameron seems like he may be going a bit quicker as well. But Wagner, only a couple of corners to contend with. The way that circuits feel, the way that you drive the LMP3 is wholly different from the LMGT3 machinery. Similar amounts of horsepower, different amount of weight, and an entirely different downforce package, but yet again, a rainbow lap from Wagner. Quick in the first, decent in the second, really making a lot of mistakes in the third sector, while Magruder is taking steps forward. That last lap was purple in 2 sectors. But really doing well. The other 3 drivers not quite up to the pace. Daniel Kent and Randy Magruder maybe having a bit of a race for the wooden spoon, as I like to say. But see what it looks like. Nearing the timing line is Cameron for sector 2. It isn't an improvement, but it is still within reach. So it is pretty much just down to sector 3 now, if there's going to be any more time to be found. Wagner's going quick yet again, putting a personal best in sector 1 and sector 2. So 8/10 is a long way. Any distance now Cameron can put down between himself and his rivals will be good to see. Coming out of 15, sparking in the decompression or in the compression rather, and it is another best personal. Well, excuse me, it isn't a personal best lap, which is a bit confusing because they were up half a second. Oh, there it goes. It just took a while. Nope, it wasn't an improvement. I don't know. I'm confused. They were green and purple all over the circuit. Maybe an invalidation, I think, because Paul Wagner doesn't improve but runs out of fuel and ends up going back into pit lane. Randy Magruder also out of fuel, also going into pit lane. So the last two cars is Magruder and Daniel Kent, whom we shall go on board with for their lap. A little squirrely, I'll admit, coming out of turn 3. It's almost... LMP3 is almost a little bit less dramatic, I think, simply because they're really quiet. All of them are, you know, turbocharged V6 engines at this point, and it's... sedate's the wrong word, as Daniel Kent actually ends up pulling over and, well, brings the end to their qualifying efforts. 5th is all they are able to do. So Cameron's pretty much got it all to himself, and realizing that, Cameron's going to pull over and park it up in the garage just in time for the top spec hypercar hyper beasts to enter the circuit. Fastest times we're going to see all day, almost certainly. Where now I get to represent my grievances in full force. So you see, all right, 1 Hertz Joda, good news. 2 Hertz Joda, all right, fine. They're in the contrasting colors, you know, as if it were a teammate car. Blah blah blah. All right, cool. More black than white, so that's all right. 3 Joda Porsches, 2 of which are identical. So, you know, that's how I feel. Honestly, how Javier Santabria's car looked is pretty much how I felt as he came out of the hairpin at turn 5. It's just, you know, it's a test. They're testing me, is what they're doing. Chris Barnes is going to be the first to set a lap time, as they were the first to come out on circuit, up the hill, and through he goes. These cars, it is the same, you know, situation where it's going to take a moment or so, well, a few moments to get them up to pace. But to a greater degree are the hypercars with the, I guess you can still call it new, tire model that was released a few months ago. It greatly increased the amount of time it takes to heat up the tires. Call it, you know, 3 to 4 laps, really, around something like Portimao, where you are up to full temperature. You're really in the window, tires upwards of 80 degrees, and really ready to push at maximum. I'm semi-expecting a couple of cars to maybe run alternating tire compounds, maybe some hard lefts. It is quite warm out there. But in qualifying, everybody's going to run the medium because maximum pace, no softs. Leon, I have to say that I don't know. I don't know where Tyler is. I know Tyler, I believe, is in the process of, I think, moving. So I believe he's still around. I'll be honest, I sort of half forgot that there was a race on tonight. Fortunately, I remembered, reasonably enough. I've had such a long week that I was like, all right, cool, I'm going to just become a vegetable for the evening, and I was like, oh wait, we have a race tonight. So I did shoot Tyler a message, didn't get a response, but I imagine doing something slightly more pertinent than talking about racing. But I'm sure he'll join me when he is able. It's Nelson at the top of the times in the fancy new Genesis Magma Racing GMR 001 hypercar that glued two rally car engines together and said, why not? But Nelson was looking very quick in practice, I must admit. Was, though, making a lot of mistakes. So I don't know if just over pushing the car for lap time for the sake of, you know, a qualifying session, but something to look out for in the race. But they do stand at the top of the times. Chris Barnes going up to second. That was either Javier Sanabria or Carlos De La Torre, but it was Javier Sanabria. I'm gonna have to be making those judgment calls all night because it's a coin flip. But Nelson maybe going over the limit in that last lap, having to come out again. Ricky Bobby in the Ferrari 499P, the 50-50 green and red livery. Well, it's not quite 50-50, but mostly. Ricky Bobby definitely been putting a lot of time down in the hypercars. Pretty much racing them as much as he can. But it's definitely been one of the quicker drivers. Maybe a bit out of shape into turn 8. Don't think that's the first. Don't think that's the last time. Well, I know it's not the first, but I don't think that's the last time we're going to see it. Not improving in Sector 1 so far. Though I'd argue maybe still some temperature to be found. But being down 2 sectors in a row is maybe a little bit disconcerting. Could be building up, though. Brief yellow for Chris Barnes, as we're going to get another brief yellow from Ricky Bobby. As I said, everybody was making it look easy in the GT3s and LMP3s, but this is not an easy circuit by any means. It's something that's, you know, it is a great mixture of corners. It's unique in a lot of elevation, downhill and uphill braking zones. It's fantastic, but asking a lot. As Carlos Sora is going to go up to 4th. It's another yellow from his Jota compatriot of Javier Sanabria. As Barnes is back in the garage, interestingly. Maybe thinking that's about as quick as I can go, and I'm just going to sit, relax, get ready for the race start. Joshua Nelson, though, going to continue pounding around in the Genesis. Try to go a bit quicker, but not this lap. I do have to say, I'm very impressed that the Genesis found its release in Le Mans Ultimate before it actually debuted in the WEC, which is super cool. Granted, I suppose if the schedule was happening the way it was supposed to happen, it would have debuted at Qatar, but because Qatar was canceled, it didn't. So I guess the timing was sort of a bit wonky, but it does seem to be extremely quick. It is between this and the Aston Martin Valkyrie for out-and-out pace at most circuits. It looks good. It sounds good. Haven't driven it yet, I will admit, so I don't have opinions on how it drives, but it seems to be singing in Mr. Nelson's hands. Leon's saying it's hard to drive, so I'll take your word for it. I don't know. I mean, I think that hypercars are just kind of hard to drive in general, especially if you're used to more or less. If you're used to sort of GT machinery, I'd say it's a big hard step. If you've been driving a lot of prototypes, it's like it's just a bigger, heavier prototype that is a bit quicker. But Nelson comes across the line at a bit of an improvement, but an improvement nonetheless. 236.85. Barnes still in pit lane, so I do think that's all we're going to get from him in qualifying. A provisional front row. See what Ricky Bobby's able to do. That is an improvement. The beautiful thing about racing is that is a green sector. That is a good sector. Even though it is 0.005 of a second of improvement, though all that dashed in Sector 2. It seems that a lot of drivers tonight, at least in qualifying, struggling to find pace in the second sector. I'm not surprised. Myself, it's almost like, it feels like Spa in a way, where the opening of the lap, you almost build a car to be fast in Sector 1 and Sector 3, or you build it to be fast in Sector 2. Not quite to the same extent. Well, Ricky Bobby comes across the line, purple in Sector 3, but overall not good enough to take the step forward. This will be their last lap, though, going a bit deep into turn 3. Not the best start. But looking up and down the board, everybody in pit lane now. So unless Ricky Bobby pulls out a absolutely mega second and third sector, it might be Nelson's day on pole position. But a reasonable enough gap to Carlos and Chris in second and third. So we'll see. He's getting ready to come across the timing line. It's an improvement, but still overall a 10th down because of that slightly sloppy Sector 1. Went into turn 13 now. Downhill break for 14. It's really difficult. It's calling one corner the most difficult is, it makes sense, but it's also, it almost feels like on any given lap it's just so hard to put together a perfect lap, and this is an imperfect lap for Ricky Bobby. So into pit lane they go to end off qualifying for the race, and immediately gonna go on to show the results because they will go away if I'm not fast enough. On pole in the hypercar is Joshua Nelson. Chris Barnes joins him on the front row. Carlos Torra in third. Ricky Bobby fourth. Javier Sanabria in fifth. Maybe some pace still to find there. In the LMP3s, it's Cameron Magruder, followed by Paul Wagner. Jeff in third. Randy Magruder fourth. Daniel Kent in fifth. Maybe, possibly. Nope, I wasn't fast enough. So the qualifying results for that for the LMGT3s. I will, however, as everybody's getting ready to grid up, show you the championship standings as we're coming in to round 4. And we'll start from the bottom up. Phil Brown leads in GT3 with 43 points. Guillermo Parrott in second. David Mastillo in third. Gabriel Prado fourth. Tetsuo Hideyoshi fifth. Luca Raza in sixth. Todd Tillery seventh. Leon Vindel eighth. Grant Thomas ninth. Kevin Sarah Lozano rounding out the top 10. Bruce Hopkins is at 11th. Josh Beckham. Michael Zacharias Weeks. That's the worst I'm going to do of that name so far. Fortunately, they're not here tonight, so that's the last. That's also the best I'm going to do tonight. Rob Ruggiero, all at 0 points. And Sophia Gregory, -4. Make sure to sign out of your races, people, and you won't get 2-point deductions. In LMP3, it's Cameron Magruder leading the championship by a slim margin ahead of Paul Wagner. Randy Magruder is in third. Daniel Kent, fourth. Luis Carmona in fifth. And Jeff H., who is now known as Jeff Hooten. That is actually the first time that I learned their name. I thought H was just their full legal last name. Is in 6th in the Duquesne, a late joiner to the championship, but a joiner nonetheless. Your standings in the hypercar field are led by Chris Barnes over Ricky Bobby, Javier Sanabria in 3rd, Ian Almo 4th, Carlos De La Torre in 5th, Joshua Nelson is in 6th, Giovanni Gomez 7th, and Domik Mateer in 8th. Sign out of your races, people. If you're not going to show up, you don't want to be negative on the cards. That just looks bad. But the driver's now getting ready to go underway. As about 30 seconds remain for the race to begin. As Nelson is poised on pole, ready to get underway. The nice thing is, it's a long run to turn 1, but it's not as big of a braking zone, so slightly less of a likelihood for carnage. Everybody probably going to take a pretty measured approach to their race start. The short formation, not really giving you any time to put heat into your tires, but I can see, and I have spotted that Josh Nelson is running hard left sides. I saw him doing it in practice, and I think a lot of that is going to be due to the fact that the circuit is a bit warm, and it's good to keep temperatures under control for what will be the 60 minutes of Portimao here for round 4. We should be going green any second. Pole sitter Joshua Nelson ready to jump those lights as soon as they go green. They're getting ready to come to the line. 3 classes for multi-class. Bit of a wiggle for Ricky Bobby off the line, but a very good, very measured start. Immediately going to the racing line is Joshua Nelson. No big drama, though. He actually goes super wide, as most of the hypercars do. Chris Barnes, though, nailing the corner with his cold tires and jumping to first place right into turn 1. So some work already for Joshua Nelson. The rest of the field, though, seeming like they got through pretty cleanly. Ricky Bobby looking like he's having a bit of look on Carlos Torre. But everybody through cleanly. No big drama. Maybe a bit of coming together in the GT3 field. As we look back, a fight's already engaging. David Mastillo able to jump ahead amongst the argy-bargy of the cars behind. Everybody off to a reasonable start. Though in LMP3, Paul Wagner has jumped Cameron Magruder at the beginning of this race, so not off to the best start is the young driver. He's going to need to make his way through if he wants to take the lead back. But very clean so far. Fortunately, my replay system, nothing's there, which is good, bad, because nothing went wrong, but you know, not as much drama as maybe we'd hope. Chris Barnes, as the leader of this race, does put down the fastest lap in class. Paul Wagner's going to do the same thing. Looking for the fight for first. The fight for second in LMGT3. Beginning to heat up already. Maybe down the inside is Todd Tillery thinking, but not quite able to get through on the Lexus, but everybody pretty much stacking up behind, giving the pole sitter the ability to just romp away in these first couple of laps. Let's see, everybody lined up. Nobody thinking about a silly send into turn 5, but a bit deep. goes Kevin Serra, but able to hold it well enough. If you're sort of ahead into turn 7, you get to stay there. Sometimes a late and aggressive move can be made into turn 8, but nobody looking like they want to do that quite yet. Serra, though, doing well on this lap to stay a bit ahead. It looks more like that Todd Tillery is the one who's beginning to be under pressure. As late into 11, but no big dramas there. Cameron Magruder made his way up back to the lead in LMP3. Let's see what that looks like there. Was it a mistake maybe into turn 11 maybe, or was it just a brave send from Cameron? Oh, it was a mistake, a big lockup into 11 and through squirts Magruder. So apply pressure early on, getting back to the lead of the race, and hopefully beginning or hoping to stay there. As Magruder already leaping away into first and hoping to stay there. His father, Randy, just behind, is now putting a bit of pressure on Wagner ahead. It's, you know, a bit of rear gunning for the other Magruder, perhaps thinking, hey, let me get between this guy and be able to play the team game. Played a bit defensive, but not close enough for the moment. But another mistake like that from Wagner could mean an opportunity for the other half of the Magruder clan. Looking back at the fight for second, everybody who was involved is still involved, as looks like that Gabriel Prado is looking a bit racy. In the back is a mistake from Kevin Serra, manages to hold on, but there's a moment, there's an opportunity for Todd Tillery as they're going to come through turn 15. If he can hold on, he managed to really make good use of that slipstream, but I think he turned in a bit too late. He's going to run a bit wide, but through the mid corner looking pretty good. I think he's going to have a run here into turn 1. Serra going defensive, but not quite, sort of lazily moving over, but they're coming together just a bit, and that kind of ruined Todd's run. Placing the car in the right way and virtually bump drafting out of turn 2 and into turn 3. Another bit of contact as Tillery maybe getting a little impatient, trying to budge his way through the roadblock. It's another opportunity is going to come here into turn 5 on the brakes. Very good, but tries to go for the switchback. Does Kevin Serra, and he just goes straight into the back of Todd Tillery. Tillery re-enters the circuit. He says, nope, you better give me that position back, as they're heading now into turn 8 side by side. Neither of them wanting to give this up. A bit more door banging to boot, as Gabriel Prado, amongst all the fighting, not able to find their way through. But now Kevin Serra has been dashed just a bit, leaving Tillery to try and find their way forward, though David Bastillo 10 seconds to the good of second place, which in not long is very impressive. I've also just realized I refer to this as an hour-long race. As it turns out, it's an hour and 15-minute race, so am I... All right, no, it's not my fault. It says 60 minutes everywhere where I've looked. I've just double-checked because, you know, if I make those mistakes, that's on me. But apparently, to possibly the surprise of everybody, it is a 75-minute race. So an extra 15 minutes of action, as I see it. Looking back towards the fight for second, it does seem that Randy's caught up to the back of Paul Wagner. Wagner was looking supremely quick at the very beginning of this race, but whether it was that early lockup given a big flat spot, or maybe just not being as quick in race trim, they're finding themselves back into the clutches of car number 58. So everybody, similar to how it was looking as the battle in second for LMGT3, the battle for second in LMP3, just about the same. One car leading a train of several more, everybody trying to get past each other. But if this were F1, well, I was about to say if this were F1, we'd call this a DRS train, but of course no, because that's not how F1 works anymore, and I won't get into everything that's wrong with Formula One circa 2026, because frankly I only have an hour and 6 minutes, and that's not enough time. But that last lap, Wagner not putting in a valid lap, which maybe shows a bit of a chink in the armor. Another lockup into turn 3 sends Wagner wide, but able to stay ahead of Magruder, though that kind of ruins his run coming up the hill, and an opportunity for Magruder may present himself. A little bit of a defensive line from Wagner, and you can see in the mirror in the top middle of your screen the other two of Kent and Jeff. They're hunting as much as this guy is. We're sticking with him for the moment. I think it's going to have to be a bit of work to get through Paul Wagner, but you know, one lockup, two lockup, it sort of, it shows that maybe a driver that's not at peace with their car, really, perhaps being a bit too aggressive with the brake bias, being a bit too aggressive with just inputs in general. Le Mans Ultimate, it asks a lot in terms of inputs. You do need to be a bit smoother and I think a bit more direct than other sims. Coming through the third sector, opening up the gap just a little bit as they all come down the straight. Possibly an opportunity coming soon here for Daniel Kent now to make a move on Randy, but everybody holding station for the moment, as it does seem that the fight for what was second has maybe taken a bit of a turn, because we've lost a very specific Lexus, Kevin Serra, having some sort of incident, and we're gonna take a look at that because it happened just a moment ago. Coming up the hill, oh, starts to get a bit of a wiggle and just isn't able to save it. Comes into the side of Gabriel Prado and into the gravel. Fortunately for Gabriel, able to hold it. Nothing too major, but Kevin Serra, though, that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt the race a lot. As you can see, the hypercars beginning to make their way through on the LMGT3s. You got to be pretty precise. Honestly, any circuit overtaking slower traffic, you need to be precise, but it's a wide circuit, is Portimao, but because of how much of the circuit you end up using corner by corner, does it feel that way? So you can see just there how close Chris Barnes got to Todd Tillery's Mustang, allowing for Barnes to maybe open up a little bit of a gap this last lap. The GT3's working in favor of Barnes. A lot of that is, well, down to luck, quite frankly. So far, doing a good job all around. Carlos Saura is really reeled in Ricky Bobby. You can just see on their last lap, 3/10 the way of the Porsche, as they're both gonna have to go a bit wide around the final corner to get around the LMGT3s. Usually you want to take the inside if you're able to. The greater amount of downforce for these hypercars allow for a bit of an easier job. You can see Ricky Bobby trying to find his way past the Corvette. It's something that we saw a few moments ago into the braking zone. Carlos maybe not as brave. I think a bit of a just a little piece of contact with the Mustang of Prado there into the braking zone. It is extremely difficult. On the brakes is where things always get the most interesting, because LMGT3s are better on the brakes than hypercars for two reasons. A, hypercars braking from greater speed. B, they do not have ABS, so you cannot use 100% of what the brakes can do. In fact, most of the cars aren't even dialed to give you 100% braking pressure. So you got to be careful on the brakes. You got to really be smart in braking zones. And not that Carlos did anything wrong there, but just wasn't able to send it up the inside and hang with Ricky Bobby. It's coming out of the final couple of corners, dropping back just a bit. David Castillo still going faster, even though Todd Tillery's been released. David's opened up a further 6.5 seconds to the rest of their field. A similar story, honestly, between that and the of the LMP3 field, as it does seem that Randy Magruder has found his way through on to Paul Wagner. Take a look at that now. Oh, is it another? It seems that Paul Wagner's really not had the ability to be confident on the brake pedal. A huge wiggle coming up the hill, and confident on the brakes is Randy. Maybe giving a little bit of rear to front quarter panel kiss there into the brakes, as they're going to take second position. And all good news for Cameron, because, well, these two are battling, which means they're going to go slow, which means, aha, I can go fast. Well, everybody just about through traffic-wise this time around. Even though this is a 75-minute race, I honestly, well, I normally anticipate that it is a no-stop race for the LMP3s, but as I look at the energy consumption of everybody in the field, that to me is a bit disconcerting, actually. I'm wondering if it's not just if it is ultimately taking the settings from the Big Grid Sunday race, which was 75 minutes, double fuel, double tires, because it definitely seems like there is at least 2 times fuel this race. So further bamboozling. It isn't going to be a no-stop race from the LMP2s. Certainly going to be a one-stop. From the rest of the field, there's a possibility that they're going to need to do it in 2. But if the tires are being worked twice as hard, I anticipate a good amount of tire change. Definitely seems like the move was made by Randy, but still working hard to fend off as around the outside of turn 2. Maybe is Wagner having a look into turn 3, is alongside, but I think the door is being open for Daniel Kent just a bit here As you can see, coming up the hill, a better exit. Not quite alongside. It will need to be a heck of a send on the brakes, but nope. Not as so. Not as such. But everybody really getting a good measure. You can see Hypercar leaders just back there. A huge moment for Joshua Nelson coming out of the corner. There it is. Another lockup for Paul Wagner. It just does not look comfortable on the brakes, and that can be the trickiest part of driving prototypes is the brakes. Once you learn them, you can get comfortable, but circuit to circuit, it might feel a bit different. Here's your leaders in Hypercar getting ready to make it through on the LMP3s. It is reasonably as easy as making it through on GT3s. A bit easier to actually overtake them on the brakes. As the LMP3s aren't quite as good, but as you can see coming through the final corner, if that was a GT3 car, absolutely flying by, but it's really once you start to apply the power in a straight line that the hypercars get the big overspeed. Josh Nelson, though, maybe getting a bit caught out by the traffic yet again. Was half a second off of Chris Barnes, but now a further second back. The fights in LMGT3 for second still raging on. Gabriel Prado still looking on at the back of the Mustang of Todd Tillery. I have to say, David Castillo's pace tonight is unbelievable. Simply 2 seconds a lap faster pretty much every lap for this entire race. That is not accidental pace, mind you. That is just a bit of extra beans, shall we say. As a brief moment for Josh Beckham at the back of the LMGT3 grid. A brief yellow flag, not seeming like Beckham's favorite race so far. Seeming just to struggle a bit. The AMG, it does put a lot of torque into its rear axle, so traction can be difficult to find, but at a circuit like Portimao, it might require a bit of adjustment, might require a bit more TC, might require a bit more gentle inputs on those pedals, but still hooning around is Josh Beckham. As we jump back to the fight for second, still holding firm, and if we take a look at the virtual energy, you can see the difference between second through fourth and the man at the helm. The difference between let's do a bit of fuel saving, let's not go full push, and let's go full push. Usually I'd recommend against, you know, that strategy. It's good to save a lap or two if you can, especially when it's double fuel, but honestly, David Castillo's pace is such that it doesn't matter ultimately, because at the moment they've opened up not quite a pit stop, but just about getting there, that honestly they could fill up their tank twice and still be in good steads, because only 20 minutes or so into this race, going very quick. So is Chris Barnes, putting another fastest lap on Josh Nelson, and I really thought that the mistake in turn one, you know, maybe a bit of a misnomer. Nelson not quite finding it easy, because on that first lap, your tires are set to 50 degrees Celsius, all four, which is well below perfect operating temperature. It's enough to get around, but you can really catch yourself out if you aren't careful on the opening lap. And I thought as we, started to come back through that it might be a bit better for him. And sometimes I'd say, maybe it's because those hard tires not really having as much grip as the mediums, but the reality is that there's not actually that big of a delta running those harder compound tires. In fact, you might actually go a bit quicker depending on what the temperatures are. It is super important to keep your tires in the window, and running a harder compound might help you do that. So the offset of less grip is basically negated by being in the right tire window. But at the moment, 4 seconds back from the leader at this stage in the race, Nelson doesn't quite have the pace, as David Mastillo is going to come in for their first pit stop and is going to jump or fall down the order rather. And we'll see what the gap looks like as we get later and later into the race, because these cars only made it 25 minutes. I'm thinking that it might be on the border of a 2-stop race. In fact, or excuse me, on the border of a 3-stop race, where it might bring into question. I was sort of saying that I don't think it really matters what the strategy is for Mastillo, because he could just have the pace. But if he works himself into an extra pit stop, that could be a bit dangerous, as super deep goes Gabriel Prado and opens the door for Leon Vindal in the Hello Kitty Corvette. Hello, says Leon Vindal. Prado says, nope, please don't overtake me just yet. As more multi-class gets in their way just a bit. It seems like that Prado was maybe a bit caught out by Barnes on the inside, and Prado actually, I think as a result of being stuck behind Todd Tillery early on, was able to save an extra lap. So not the pace maybe to get through, but perhaps the strategy. And anybody who has spent any time listening to me in a comms booth know that me oh my, I sure do love talking about strategy. I'm an endurance racer at my core, quite honestly, and tomorrow I'll be taken to Monza for an 8-hour race, and possibly on Sunday the 6 hours of Spa as well. As I just love the way the races play out over long distances, and sort of how differently you can afford to think about racing a race in that sense. As Vindal now has entered pit lane, Tillery staying out, and I must say, very impressed by Barnes's mileage that he's getting out of his Porsche, because ultimately is going to have an extra lap over Joshua Nelson just behind. Nelson having to push harder to stay within, and that could be part of why there's a bit of that yo-yo effect between them, where, well, case in point, Joshua Nelson seems to be pushing a bit harder, where Chris Barnes, in fact, let's go on board with him to maybe see and also hear what type of fuel saving he might be doing, because I imagine a bit of a lift, maybe about 20-30 meters before the braking zone. It's not much, but it makes a big difference if you're pretty much doing that on every corner. And as Nelson's not doing that, or certainly not doing it to the same extent, he's able to sort of catch up. Seems like whenever they get into traffic, though, the gap starts to open. So Barnes doing an excellent job at this stage. As it surprises me regularly that once you dial up the fuel burn to basically double, you start to see that some of these hypercar drivers are able to get greater fuel mileage, which isn't the case normally. LMGT3s use basically at a push has you know, not more fuel, but more fuel efficiency. But once it comes to lifting and coasting, the hypercars are able to claw that time back very regularly, outsaving GT3s, and I think a lot of that is to do with their hybrid energy systems that are in almost all of the cars. They're in all of the cars that are on track this evening, that is for sure. Joshua Nelson has entered pit lane, which has allowed for Carlos Torre to take second place. Will that be the case when it comes to as the race unfolds later on? Not sure, but fuel saving definitely puts you in a good position. As I've said before, the double fuel, it essentially it plays out as if it's a double distance race in terms of strategy. You get the same number of stops as you would do in a 2.5-hour race, and you know, 2 extra laps, 3, 4 extra laps, less fuel used than some other cars. That's 4, you know, laps worth of and possibly 10, 15 liters less of fuel that needs to go into your car. That's less time spent stationary. That is just guaranteed time that you will get back. Bit of movement as Gabriel Prado's actually coming down pit lane again. That is due to, as I'm seeing, they got a drive-through penalty, either for track limits or maybe for a pit lane speeding violation. I'm going to attempt to show a replay to see if it was... Okay, it was a pit lane violation. So speeding on entry minorly means that Prado got that drive-through. There is also a pending penalty for Kevin Serra, though I don't know exactly what that would be for. Maybe I'll take a check. It is, in fact, another pit lane speeding violation. Do I know the severity of the penalty? I do not. Usually it will show up on screen and tell me, but not today, apparently. But that is all right. No, the LME broadcast control is so fantastic that when there's little issues, I simply don't care. I just don't. Because coming out of pit lane, Joshua Nelson has actually taken the lead of this race, and I have a sneaking suspicion that Chris Barnes, who hasn't just dropped 1 position, but has dropped 2, has taken tires. But no. Rather, Barnes is still stationary. So something clearly has happened in pit lane that's caused Barnes... I'm wondering if there was a mistake maybe on pit in. It looked like there was a bit of damage on the front of that car, so possibly a necessary repair. As just to add insult to injury, there is a penalty for speeding in the pit lane for Chris Barnes. So not only put off by the repair, but going to be put off by the impending penalty. So a race that was going great to a race that is not going great. Ricky Bobby jumping Carlos in pit lane as well, though Ricky Bobby not having saved as much fuel. Let's see where that comes throughout the race. Paul Wagner under a bit of pressure yet again, as it's Jeff Hooten who is looking to overtake. Though if we look at the energy display at the bottom center of your screen, it's going the way of Wagner. He's gotten that extra lap of fuel for sure, which may come to be good, may come to bite, as a bit of a dive to the inside does Jeff H, but Wagner shutting the door, turning in just a little bit early, says, "Nuh-uh, don't you even dare try to think about that." But it should be another lap, possibly even two, from Jeff H as they come through. Wagner's going to get that extra, as the two Magruders have all but scampered away into the distance. 5.5 seconds, almost 6 seconds is Cameron, and Randy a further 4.5 seconds ahead of Paul Wagner. So it's going to be down to strategy for the two of them. It's going to be make or break. It's going to be not driving like a dingus, as I often say to Cameron. Chris Barnes exiting pit lane now after serving that penalty that has dropped him down into 5th. And really, it's going to be some doing to gain positions back in this race. To get back up to the lead, I won't say is impossible, but is currently versus a lap down from Joshua Nelson as of the first chain of pit stops. Out of these first few pit stops, Tetsuo Hideyoshi finding himself up into 3rd. In fact, having just made a move on Todd Tillery, so we'll see what that looked like. Perhaps a mistake from Tillery, because Hideyoshi wasn't within reach, but perhaps are we going to see a slow moving forward in a second? That is, I believe, well, you couldn't see him, but you could hear him. Out in the gravel at turn 8 was Todd Tillery, so that mistake costing them race time, costing them a position, as up onto the podium position goes the Porsche of Tetsuo, who's been running this Porsche in not just this series, but I will admit, maybe not coming to grips with it and being as comfortable as I've seen him in other machinery, but sticking with it nonetheless, and at the moment it's paying off, because it's P3. There's Chris Barnes coming through, a long road ahead, a long final 40 minutes. As the LMP3s are coming down pit lane, getting ready to park up. Only Paul Wagner staying out, making that extra lap work, which it does show the trade-off between fuel saving and pace, because Wagner not seeming to stay ahead of either Magruder is now ahead of them both temporarily. As I always say, you just watch out. A bit of fuel saving you can gain multiple seconds once all said and done, but it definitely will be, well, actually, it's a bit on the bubble for a one stop for the LMP2s. In fact, they might all need a bit of a splash and dash towards the end of this race. Coming out of pit lane, though, everybody's stacked up. Cameron Magruder, though, yet again, the leader in class, dropping back massively. Something must have happened. Some repair may be underway. I would say, it was taking tires, but that it does not explain losing about a minute, maybe a minute and a half in pit lane. There was a little bit of drama coming out between Daniel Kent and Jeff H. Unlike most of the field, I do not anticipate that these LMP2s will be taking tires. They can do, honestly, possibly about 4 hours of racing on a set of tires, depending on the circuit, if they really wanted to. Obviously, double tire wear, not quite the case, but the story now is Magruder on the back foot, Barnes on the back foot, and I'm taking a look, but I don't see anything that would explain why they were stationary for so long. I can guess what their based on their lap times when they come through to this lap, I can make an educated guess on how long they were stationary or how much longer they ended up stationary. But that really is going to make Cameron's day a bit difficult, as Magruder just put a move on Paul Wagner into turn one, I do believe. Show me that in the pretty pictures. And see, oh, I think a mistake for Wagner maybe coming out of pit lane, because here's Randy on his own. There's Wagner coming out of pit lane. So it was just an effort of pit stop timing. Randy just taking that spot back. But it looked like it was done on track. But they are significantly closer together than they were earlier on. So multiple fights at multiple stages here in LMP2. And quite frankly, everything's pretty much shuffled around. The only thing that is for certain at the moment is Wagner using the hypercar traffic as an ability to get alongside, but here comes the Mustang of David Mastillo, who, seeing the fighting car, steps out of the way, being very compliant with these LMP3s, which oftentimes you have to do. Both classes kind of have to work together to stay out of each other's way, because if they don't, it can get a bit nasty. A brief moment for Joshua Nelson. Lost a bit of time there, but at the moment, still good. Couple of seconds lost, but 20 seconds to the good of the rest of the field at the moment. So still comfortable, as we say. Back to the battle between Wagner and Magruder. A mistake into turn one means that the door is open, and Paul Wagner is going to hold it. They come onto the back straight. We'll see whether Randy's got the legs, but it doesn't seem like he does. So advantage Wagner as we get past the halfway point in this race. It is interesting how almost in sync both leaders are former leaders in hypercar in just both the prototype fields. To put it simply, something happened in pit lane as Magruder made his way through on Jeff H, and we will see what that looked like. It was amongst hypercar traffic. That's the race leader, Joshua Nelson, making it so Jeff H ran a bit wide, and oh, hold on a moment. A bit more just happened than we could see there. Just a second. See that again from the TV side. As through comes Nelson. Oh, I appear to be doing all the wrong things. Excuse me, but hopefully this will be a good view of what happened. But Nelson brakes, maybe gets a bit out of shape, and starts to lose the car, leaving Jeff H with nowhere to go. So that's where Nelson lost time earlier, and Jeff H loses a position because of it. It's a bit unfortunate there. But the good news for Magruder is it's released him from the rear of the Duquesne, and now breaking forward to close up. As I feel, as per usual, I've made a bit of a fool of myself, because I claimed that Cameron was much further behind than in fact he was, so it looked like it was way more because Wagner hadn't have pitted yet, but still losing a heap of time in the pit lane as well, as it was an extra. Can't see. I'm trying to take a look at the pit stop times. It was 81 seconds for Magruder and Wagner 68 seconds. So I'm wondering if it was a new set of tires for Cameron Magruder. I think it may have been. I said that the LMP3s were unlikely to have changed tires, but as it turns out, Magruder going for an alternate strategy, trading track position for pace in the long run. And we'll see how that plays out, because no driver's out of reach quite yet, but it does mean that Cameron's going to have to make his way through. It's coming up to the back of Daniel Kent now. The other half of the Magruder ahead of him, and you can just see Paul Wagner within reach. So Cameron, though, has to get a shift on to really get ahead. As I think a bit of multi-class boss hoggery between the leader in LMGT3 and the man in third, Carlos Saura. We'll see what that looks like. Oh, it's a bit of argy-bargy on the brakes, but nothing as major as perhaps I thought it was. Generally, when I see contact between a slower class and a faster class, usually there is a lot more to do, but fortunately for both of them, just a minor scrape. No harm done in the long run, but it's still Joshua Nelson sitting pretty out in the lead, maybe struggling a bit. It seems they're maybe having a bit of a wiggle in a lot of places. I'm wondering two things I see. Perhaps running lower TC, which, if you can handle it, does generally make your car faster. You're a bit quicker out of corners, less electronics between you and the tires putting power into the road, but it could also be those tires having a bit of an issue. As a moment for Randy Magruder that just happened. Everybody's stacking up. Hypercars and LMP3s. Magruder, oh, he's gonna get collected by Ricky Bobby, who also collects Daniel Kent, which allows for allows for Cameron Magruder to come on through. How lucky is that? As it also gives Carlos an opportunity to squeeze on through, but it was just rear locking for the Ferrari. And bringing two cars with you is never something you want to see. Pretty much earning the ire of the LMP3 field is the best way to describe that. Joshua Nelson, that last lap, having another moment. A 39.6. It's about 6 seconds off the pace. So mistakes are starting to come a little bit thick and fast for the leader in Hypercar, but it was Great work and great luck for Carlos to avoid all of the melee. It was also great work and great luck from Cameron Magruder. I was maybe questioning the viability of that tire change, but as it turns out, with a little bit of luck, it's absolutely come great, because here he is, a second off the rear of Paul Wagner for the lead of the race. Wagner, though, still doing better on fuel usage. I almost said virtual energy usage, but of course these prototypes do not have virtual energy. It is just fuel. But close as Cameron closing. Immediately finding different lines, ways to put pressure on Wagner. I think Cameron knows that Paul Wagner is slower, as Javier Sanabria and Ricky Bobby both entering and coming out of pit lane at different times. I think Ricky Bobby, that can be explained. The damage from locking the rears and spinning into two P3s speaks for itself. But Javier, though, came in for something that I am not aware of. I don't think it was for fuel. It is far too early for that, but it's actually, well, jumping Chris Barnes back into a lot more of a favorable position. Just behind these two. Seems that Jeff H has found his way past another Genesis. Excuse me, not Genesis, Ginetta. And that move was done just a moment ago. Seemingly into turn one. Definitely having the run out of the final corner. And Daniel Kent not electing to go defensive. And on the brakes. Confidently and with poise. Jeff Hooton is through and up to third place. The prototypes have an incredibly topsy-turvy race tonight. Things have seemed a lot more tentative in LMGT3. No big drama, no big muss, no big fuss. It does, however, seem, though, that Leon Vindel has jumped all the Fords and is actually quite close now to David Mastillo, who must have had one heck of an incident to have that 20-second gap completely erased. And pressure now, I would argue, for the Mustang at the front, because, well, as I've been alluding to, and the story in the fuel tank is, you know, Mastillo using a bit more virtual energy. That first stint using a lot, however, this second one doing a lot more, putting a lot more effort into fuel saving, realizing that, oop, this might be a bit troublesome, and losing some time throughout this second stint. So perhaps under a bit of pressure, as every time I look away, these P3s are just getting after each other, because Cameron Magruder's made his way up on Wagner, and we'll see where it was done. Coming out of turn 3, having a run. Oh, having a big run. Yet again, not going terribly defensive, just sort of staying up the middle of the circuit as Cameron, confident on the brakes, really just parks it on the apex. Leaves Wagner with nowhere through to go, as the young driver is back up to the lead. Will it stay there? Well, unless he scampers away, I think Wagner is absolutely still within a shout of this race. The LMGT3 field already beginning to enter pit lane as another speeding violation. This time for Leon Vindel, who's, I think it's the fifth, possibly the fifth car to get a penalty in this race. So really not, I said it wasn't a difficult pit entry, as a moment for Carlos Torre, but a brief yellow flag. But no, nothing too scary, as it turns out, but a bit of time lost to the leader. A bit of time given up to Chris Barnes behind, but Carlos Torre driving into the night mostly comfortable. And I have to say, I will admit, Carlos and Chris will be teammates of mine tomorrow at Monza for our endurance race. Am I silently judging them? Absolutely. Are they both quicker than me? Absolutely. But I'm still silently judging them, and if they watch this back, I just want them to know that. But doing well. Not in a Porsche tomorrow, though. They're gonna have to take the mighty Peugeot, which has admittedly become a bit of a favorite. Gabriel Prado, 2 stints in a row, superior fuel saving, meaning that they lead the race temporarily. A perfect opportunity. Snap a quick screenshot. Go bang! I'm winning the race. Just, you know, maybe blur out the virtual energy display, and because context isn't important. Prado's going to be in pit lane in just a moment, which will be the final stop for the GT3s, which does only leave the hypercars to need to come down pit road. Paul Wagner still within reach of Cameron Magruder in the lead, and I think at this stage it does seem that Cameron, now having got ahead, is realizing I need to fuel save if I'm going to make this race. I'm really going to need to start to be a bit more tactical if I want to go the next 20 minutes, because everyone looks like they have it reasonably in hand. Most of the field upwards of 50%, though it is close. That 50%, about 10, 11 laps of fuel, which should be enough to get over the line, but their fuel computers probably sharing a bit of a different reality. But because Wagner saved early, he doesn't have to lift as much. He doesn't have to do as much management as the driver ahead. So the fight's back on for the lead. Wagner through the first sector is looking very, very racy. Possibility of a run here. You can see the gap at the bottom of your screen starting to close, but on the brakes, Cameron seeming a bit more confident, going a bit defensive as well, leaving no room. The top 3 in hypercar looking to come down pit lane fairly soon, but it does seem that Nelson is going to have this in hand coming out of pit lane, as the remaining fight for the lead at the moment is in LMP3. I do slightly worry, though, about Mr. Jeff H., who is in third. He is catching up to this fighting front pack, but one of the things that comes with driving in LMU, and especially adjusting to it, is learning about, you know, what race strategy is about the importance of it. Maybe not realizing how much you're able to save, or really if saving is worth it at all, because they're on the bubble of finishing this race, I believe, has another 2 speeding penalties I've just noticed. For Tetsuo Hideyoshi and for Gabriel Prado. Prado's second of the race. And I think when I said that it's not a very tricky pit lane, or not a very tricky pit entry, apparently I was wrong, because this is just about the most pit lane speed violations I've seen in a race. And just knocks the point home of the importance of practicing pit entries. Mr. Kevin Boss, welcome in. I don't know when you put that in chat, but hello, I hope you're still here. And you understand the importance of practicing pit entry. I remember a time where it's, it could go a bit wrong. Maybe braking too late, locking up the rears, maybe hitting a wall at pit entry. It happens to the best of us. I've done it. You've done it. But no, it is something that is, I mean, possibly not quite respected enough. I feel like it's just like, oh, it's a formality. You just enter pit lane. But nope. It requires a unique skill set. As Joshua Nelson's getting ready to come down pit lane, as I think Jeff H just pulled in to pit lane, knowing that he needs the splash and dash. He's going to execute it early, so that really shows how much that he is on the bubble, as Nelson's getting ready to come down pit lane. Let's see what a pit entry looks like on board the Genesis. Coming all the way down to 60 kph. No speeding violation for Nelson. Not this late in the race. That could in fact spell doom otherwise. But you can sort of see you're coming into it very quickly out of the final corner. But making it through. And fortunately, keeping everything where it belongs. Yeah, Kevin, there's nothing quite like just destroying your car. It's like, the worst part is you're not even on the racing circuit. Like, you've basically pulled off the circuit and gone into the slowest part of the race, which is going 60 kilometers an hour and like stopping. And it hurts so bad because I've done it. Speeding, I've almost ruined one of our races by speeding. I've crashed in pit lane. And everybody does it. I think I saw a video not too long ago of a incredibly skilled driver on LMU ruining a race by sliding into the wall and getting damage. So my homework, my sim racing homework for tonight, go practice pit entries more. It matters. As out of pit lane comes Nelson, and I guess sort of the bad news is for Chris Barnes is the hope of getting higher than third. Maybe not quite on the cards tonight. But the fight at the lead, though, in LMP3. The gap's opened up a little bit. But if we look at what the fuel outlook is, Magruder was saving. He's kind of stopped, and I don't know, I'm a little bit nervous that he's going to be able to make this work. Jeff H came in and stopped moments ago, which I don't actually know, which is a little confusing, whether he actually took any virtual energy, as he's back in pit lane again. Something's gone a bit wrong. for Jeff H here at Portimao because he's coming out of pit exits. At the back of the field, not having taken extra energy, so who knows? Well, the good news is, Kevin, I will tell you, we got plenty of bodies for Monza, so you got plenty of time to practice during the race. We may have almost full strength team. We might actually have 5 people. I actually told Cormac not to join us tomorrow because 6 people cannot all drive at an 8-hour race if you do it properly. But no, it'll be good. It'll be grand. It's, you know, if you don't feel like driving, you actually don't have to. Hire that deal. We're counting down the final few minutes, final 11 minutes to be specific. It's come down to fuel calculation for the lead in LMP3. It's come as a result of an extra long pit stop for the lead in Hypercar. And it, well, has come down to sheer pace for the lead in LMGT3. David Mastillo has absolutely crushed it. Adjusted mid-race, doing a bit more fuel saving, put themselves in a bit of a better position. But that first stint, 2 seconds a lap quicker, pretty much every lap. Giving every bit of beans. I do recommend, Kevin, practice, please. Please. I know it's Monza, but like, it's difficult. Or it is difficult. It's surprisingly difficult. It's not just the traffic. Well, it is a lot of the traffic, but at least do a bit of practice, because if that car ends up in a wall for the second week in a row, I am going to be a bit annoyed, because frankly I put in effort this time. I built a setup, I did strategy, and I do actually want to see how well we can do, because it was good for 2 hours last week until it went a bit wrong. There's it's a bit sedate as we've gone into the evening here at Portimao. No real drama on circuit yet, outside of the impending potential drama of Carlos having a bit of a moment. That wasn't what I was going to mention. Now, the impending drama in the LMP3s, whether everybody's going to make it on fuel, which my guess is at this point they are. I'm not entirely sure, because I don't know. I could do some math. I'm gonna attempt to do some math. Here's Cameron Magruder a bit into his 39th lap. There should be maybe 5 more laps in this race. He has just enough fuel for 5 more laps, so it will be close at the end of the day. And let's just say, if he doesn't make it on fuel, I think he will be fed up, as the namesake on his car would suggest. Yes, Kevin, the napkin math. Listen, my napkin math is... I think my napkin math has actually gotten better as a result of constantly dubbing myself the race strategist whenever we do anything, because I do lots of napkin math now. But you're right to be a bit concerned, because I've gotten it very wrong before. Listen, my napkin math, can we call it napkin math that makes me miscount when races end? Because that's not a good look when I forget that a race has ended. So tonight I won't do that. Probably. Maybe. We still got time. We still got 7 minutes for me to do something completely wrong. Granted, I started off the evening thinking that it was an hour race, and as it turns out, it isn't. I thought it was going to be single times fuel usage in tires. It wasn't. Was that my fault? Maybe. You know, we'll see. But I somehow, some way, Chris Barnes has made his through on Carlos Saura. Out of seemingly nowhere. I know they are friends. I don't know if Carlos maybe did the friendly thing and let him through. If we look back at the replay, was it on pace or was it on pace alone? It seems like maybe an LMP3 might have ended up making the decision. Around the outside of turn 3. I would say that wasn't given up willingly. I'm gonna claim that was on pace. But Chris Barnes finding himself up to second. So a great recovery from being at the back of the field and a full lap down from the leader. Well, a lap down plus from the leader. We shall see if Chris can continue to leap away from Carlos. The previous lap times would suggest yes. 2 seconds already to the good. As fortunately, all the Jota Porsches have not occupied the exact same space for this entire race, which has been really handy. As we're coming in to the final few minutes, everybody's got enough virtual energy. Maybe. If Cameron's got enough, it's going to be exactly enough. 4 minutes, 8%. I'm starting to believe that he's not going to make it. I'm really starting to believe. No, I'm not starting to believe he's not going to make it. Cameron seeming to... It seemed like he was adjusting. It seemed like he really turned up the fuel saving at the beginning of this stint, realizing, oh, I'm not going to make it, but has now sort of driven himself into a position where, well, he's going to have to go for a splash and dash, and unfortunately, that's going to mean not first and possibly not even second. A brief yellow flag for Gabriel Prado, but no terminal damage done. Which is always good news. You never want a DNF at the end of the race. Especially with a few minutes to go. At the very least, just limp her home. See, it should be in this lap for Cameron Magruder. He's driven a really good race, but he's driven a really wrong strategy. So we come in, it's 2 laps short. That's all it is. It's so close on the bubble. In fact, as we're coming to it, there's a possibility that Daniel Kent might not make this. He's into pit lane. Comes Cameron Magruder. No speeding. And here comes Paul Wagner to take the lead of the race on the second to last lap, showing the importance of strategy, the importance of fuel saving, especially in a race like this. LMP2s, they have such fantastic fuel mileage that most of the time when you drive them, you really don't need to fuel save all that much because they can go 75, 80 minutes on a tank depending on the circuit. If at double fuel, when it's on the bubble, what plays out as a 2.5 hour race is just outside of an easy one stop. But Wagner did the work in the first stint, continued to do the work in the second, and unless something dramatic happens, is going to take the lead of this race as Joshua Nelson, another wiggle. Nelson really asking a lot from the car. It's all gas, no brakes for this guy. He's getting ready to start the final lap by just a little bit. And looking at the rest of the LMP3 field, it is going to be really close for Daniel Kent. I think he's really starting to put a dramatic amount of fuel saving down that last lap, using less than he has the entire race. We go on board. We can see, is it going to be into pit lane? Staying out. I'm curious, how great is this lift going to be coming into the first corner? We're across the line. It's going to be really close on fuel. 3.1% across the line. There's actually a possibility that Kent has gotten this wrong and is going to need to be really careful. You can see just not using the throttle unless he absolutely has to. It's going to be extraordinarily close. This I also claim is a bit of a rite of passage. In Le Mans Ultimate, you get your fuel wrong, so you have to then spend an entire lap going far slower than your car is capable of going on an economy drive just to get across the line. And it should be Joshua Nelson getting ready to come across the line. He didn't look like he had the pace, but it did look like he made less mistakes. Joshua Nelson coming around the final corner, taking the new kid on the block, the Genesis, up to the top of the field. It will be victory for Joshua Nelson here at Portimao. And immediately doing some victory donuts, victory J-turn. Paul Wagner has come across the line at the lead of the LMP3 fields. And the question on my mind is Daniel Kent going to make it on fuel? He is. He actually saved a bit extra. 1.2% coming across the line. A sigh of relief and a second place finish. And LMP3. Chris Barnes. Let's see what the gap is. Still not having come across the line. Really only having started a lap not too long ago. Cameron Magruder came across the line and frustratingly straight into pit lane. David Castillo. A absolutely stellar drive. A mix of strategy, a mix of pace, and a lot of V8 rumble and tumble. He's going to come around the final corner. Fastest lap. Victory on the field. And across the line comes David Castillo, as does Carlos Torre, just ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our race here at Portimao. A bit of a, I'd call it a confusing one. Lots of mistakes, lots of drama in pit lane that had swapped races around, the race itself being longer than perhaps it was supposed to be. I don't know. But still a exciting event, as here are your results. At Portimao, taking victory overall, Joshua Nelson leading ahead of Chris Barnes, who made the recovery up to second from over a lap down at the end of the first stint. Carlos Torre on the podium, followed by Javier Sanabria in fourth and Ricky Bobby in fifth, locking the rears, taking out an LMP2 or an LMP3 or two, robbed them of a better result. In LMP3, it was Paul Wagner nailing the fuel strategy from start to finish, not needing to slow down, not needing to take an emergency stop. So it's victory for them. Daniel Kent barely making it over the line. The economy drive of all economy drives. Cameron Magruder, frustrating third. I would think Randy Magruder, a frustrating fourth. I would argue as well that coming together with Ricky Bobby, putting them off, and Jeff H. Unsure why, but taking 2 extra pit stops in that race. But showing decent pace, though, as a newcomer to Le Mans Ultimate. In LMGT3, it was David Castillo who took it overall. Never in doubt. Leon Vindel, not a great qualifying result, but excellent work on strategy, excellent work on pace, and I think I think it was David Castillo was the only LMGT3 not to get a speeding penalty at some point in that race. Gabriel Prado, maybe second place was on the cards, but, well, 2 penalties in 2 pit stops, not looking great. Tetsuo Hideyoshi finishing in 4th, Todd Tillery in 5th, and Josh Beckham managing to stick it out in their Mercedes, crossing the line in 6th. But for once, I will call it, ladies and gentlemen. I will not spend 2 hours chatting because I am absolutely exhausted, so I apologize for what can only be described as a subpar performance. I would describe it as a subpar performance, but it was still a stellar race here at Portimao. Another beautiful example of multi-class racing and multi-class strategy and all the great things that Le Mans Ultimate has to offer. If you're interested in joining this series or any of the series hosted, head to americasracingleague.com. That will take you to SimGrid. That will take you to Discord. All the information, all in their relevant places. I should be back on Sunday for the finale of the Big Grid Sunday Season 6. We shall see. My homework in the sim, practice pit entry. My homework in life, the Spa 6 hours is tomorrow. I know it starts a bit early for us in the States, but at least watch a bit of it. Sure to be an excellent event, and just watch more racing in general. You can learn a lot about the sim. You can appreciate more of what you do in your free time, and honestly, it's just cool as heck. Thank you all for joining me tonight, and always, of course, thank you to the drivers for giving me something great to watch. Be safe, be kind to yourself. If you got some extra time, chill a bit this weekend. Take it easy. recuperate just a bit. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a wonderful weekend. And I will speak with you all soon.